Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second Hadley Tech It Out discussion. My name is Ricky Enger. I am an assistive technology learning expert at Hadley, and my job each month is to bring us together for Tech It Out. Our Tech It Out discussions are a chance for us to get together as a community, explore a topic, answer questions, share resources with each other, and just learn from each other as a good community should. So I want to first thank all of you who joined us for the first Tech It Out discussion. You guys were what made that such a success. I know that some of you couldn't join either because of other obligations, you had things going on, or because the room filled up really quickly and there wasn't room for everyone. We have since taken care of that, so we do have plenty of people, we have plenty of room for people to come in, so the more the merrier for sure. We had such a successful turnout last time that we were only able to cover half of our intended topic. So the general topic initially was food delivery, and that was going to cover both grocery delivery as well as restaurant and meal kit delivery. So we were able to cover grocery delivery in our first discussion. If you didn't catch that, it's available on YouTube, or you can send me an email. I'll be happy to send you the link. I'm at Enger, E-N-G-E-R, at hadley.edu. So with that first portion of the discussion taken care of, we now want to move on to getting food from restaurants or getting food delivered from meal kits. And we'll talk about sort of what both of these things are and how they work. The restaurant delivery service is probably pretty self-explanatory. I mean, I can recall living in a very small town and we had Pizza Hut or Domino's. That was like the sum total of options that were available to us. Then I moved to a slightly bigger town and we had Pizza Hut, Domino's, and we had Chinese food too. So if we didn't want pizza or pizza, we could have Chinese. And each of these places were, the delivery was done in-house. So a person was hired by the restaurant specifically to do deliveries. That's all changed with the advent of, smartphones and apps and websites and having all this stuff at our fingertips. Someone had the bright idea, what would be cool if we had a fleet of drivers that could pick up from multiple restaurants, not just pizza or Chinese, but hey, maybe we could work with a Greek food restaurant or an Indian food restaurant. And we just have to provide the front end so that people can come in, look at what they want, order it, and our drivers will bring that food directly to them. I want to talk about, I'll talk about 3, but that is by no means the total of my experience because I have 2 pages of food delivery apps on my phone. That probably says more about me than I care to admit. But I want to talk about 3 of them. And the first is Grubhub. So each of these food delivery services have things that they do really well, and they have things that they maybe don't do so well. Grubhub is nice in that it is international, so if you're in Canada, if you're pretty much anywhere in the US that has any kind of delivery service, you're very likely to have Grubhub in that area. So availability really makes it nice. It is also probably one of the longest lived services of this ilk. It was one of the first to kind of hit the scene. And so you would think that after this many years, Grubhub would have gotten a lot right. And it has. It is a service that is most likely to have the items on the menu that the restaurant has. And by that I mean, let's say that there is a new promotion at Taco Bell and it's a double chalupa box or something like that. And, you know, it's just come out like 10 days ago. Grubhub is very likely going to have this, whereas many of the other services may not, right? They tend to update their menus fairly often. So you can be pretty confident that if I've ordered this on Grubhub, it's going to be at the restaurant. They're not going to be calling me and saying, this thing that you ordered, the restaurant people have never heard of it. And that has happened on other services, which I'll get to in a moment. The other cool thing about Grubhub is that it's available on the web. It's available through apps. And if you own an Apple TV, it is, to my knowledge, the only restaurant delivery service that has an app on the Apple TV. So if you've always had this dream of, I want to sit and watch a movie and order my food all from the same device, you can do that from the Apple TV. And in fact, the Apple TV is probably the best Grubhub experience. So what does Grubhub do badly? Well, the accessibility is not the greatest. And you can use it. It's just that if you are accustomed to flicking through options and looking at, okay, what restaurants do I have? I expect to place my finger on one and then flick to the right and get another. Grubhub doesn't do that. Grubhub has this lovely rating system that you could say, I hate this restaurant, I'm going to rate it a 1, or I love it, I want to rate it a 5. You have to flick through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for each restaurant before you get to the next one. So a nice kind of workaround there, or thing to keep in mind if you are using it on a touchscreen device, is to just move your finger downward and use Explore by Touch rather than flicking through the options that you have there. One last nice thing about Grubhub is that it's pretty upfront about the fees that it's going to charge you. And some restaurants are not. Some of them you don't know until it's almost time to check out. And Postmates, which is the next service I'd like to talk about, is a great example of that. Postmates works very similarly to Grubhub with a couple of key differences. So this too will add restaurant partners to its list of places that it delivers from. It will show menus from those restaurants. Whenever you choose a restaurant, you'll be able to see its menu, or in some cases, they may not have a menu and they will still pick up the items that you request, but you're typing in a custom item. So in that case, you don't know how much you're going to pay necessarily, because you're adding custom items that don't have prices associated with them. Postmates has probably the biggest selection, at least in my area, of restaurants to choose from. So whereas, just as an example, Grubhub has between 13 and 18 restaurants to choose from in my area, depending on the day, Postmates can have upwards of 50. So the selection is much, much greater. But as with all of these services, Postmates has things that it does well and things that it does maybe not so well. It too can have some accessibility issues, the most disturbing of which is, again, trying to flick through restaurant options, and you might have McDonald's and then you flick to the right and it says, can't connect to the network, retry. What? I was just flicking to the next item. What happened? Nothing in particular happened, and I haven't really been able to figure out why Postmates does this, but everything does work properly if you, again, move down your list of restaurants with Explore by Touch rather than flicking through your options. Postmates is also available on the web, so that's another way that you can order your items. By far, the biggest downside of Postmates for me is that there are fees. There are lots and lots of fees. So you think, okay, I'm going to pay $3.99 to have this delivered or $5.99 to have this delivered. And that may be perfectly fine for you. What also happens, though, is that Postmates may have priced their items a bit higher than they are in the restaurant. And that, too, may be something that you can grow to accept. However, the third thing that Postmates does is you have a service fee and you have taxes. And taxes is the big one. Let's say that you have an order for $38 or something. Postmates has charged upwards of $10 in, quote, taxes. And so you have to be very careful about looking at what these fees are before you place the order. And that's, again, a downside to some of these, is that you don't see it until you've added everything to the bag and you're ready to check out. And now suddenly, oh, look, that's like $20 more than I thought it would be. So just be aware of that when ordering from Postmates. The last grocery delivery restaurant delivery service, rather. See, I had a flashback to part one. You too can listen to part one. But for now, yeah, let's talk about restaurant delivery. The last one I want to mention is called DoorDash. And this one is fairly new to me. I think it's probably been around for a little while, certainly not as long as Grubhub, but it's been around for a while. And DoorDash is kind of the friendliest overall service that I've found. And by that, I mean the drivers seem to be friendlier. The customer service, if something happens to go wrong, seems to be friendlier. And the interface, while it does still have some problems, is also friendlier than others. Again, if you're flicking through restaurant options, you're going to have to flick through some extraneous info between each of the restaurants. So you can still use the trick of moving your finger down the restaurant options rather than flicking through them if you're on a touchscreen device like your iPhone or your Android device. DoorDash as well is available on the web. And another nice thing about it is that while there are fees, as there are with any of these delivery services, they tend to be a little more reasonable with DoorDash, and they also tend to be not so hidden, right? So it's nice to know I can estimate how much an order is going to cost and be pretty accurate. DoorDash isn't charging crazy fees. The biggest downside to me for DoorDash is that while places like Grubhub and Postmates offer opportunities for customization, so you might write something in the special instructions box, or you might have, in the case of Grubhub, specific things that have been listed by the restaurant that you can choose or add to your order. In the case of DoorDash, they don't tend to offer that as often. They will say, this restaurant does not allow customization. And of course, the restaurant does, but perhaps DoorDash doesn't in that instance. So that is the downside of DoorDash. But overall, I find it the friendliest of the three that I've mentioned. For you guys in Canada, just want to mention a couple of things for you. Grubhub and I believe Postmates, I'm not so sure about DoorDash, but Grubhub and Postmates are international. So whether you're in Canada, there are people listening later from Australia and the like, you guys will be able to take advantage of these services as well. Some specific ones for Canada: Skip the Dishes. That was a nice one. JustEat.com is another that you might check out. So, hopefully, while some of these things may seem very U.S. centric, some have spread beyond the U.S. And in the case of some of these, like, I don't believe that Skip the Dishes is in the U.S. I believe it's Canada only. So you guys can check that out. Now, before I open this up for community discussion, which is truly the best part of the event, I want to talk a little bit, and I truly mean a little bit, about meal kit services. I'm only going to touch on this because this is the segment of this that I have the least personal experience with, but there are definitely some things to like about meal kits. So what exactly is that anyway? A meal kit delivery service is, you know how you want a home cooked meal, but you really have no desire to chop all those veggies for the stir fry, or you just can't be bothered to look up the recipe. You're sick of doing that. If only you had some really nice, fresh ingredients and some instructions, and you had to put it together. It's still a home-cooked meal, right? But a lot of the work has been taken out of it for you. So that's the idea behind meal kit services. There are several of these: Sunbasket, HelloFresh, Blue Apron, Home Chef, just to name a couple. There's one in Canada, in Alberta and Ontario for right now. I want to thank Sharon for sending this one in, and it's called Heart to Home. The cool thing about this one is that if you're eating gluten-free, or maybe you're doing low-carb, high-fat, or you're worried about your salt intake, Heart to Home has these different recipes and kind of already prepared meals that take those things into consideration. Something else that kind of falls into this category would be Schwan's, and I want to thank Cindy for reminding me about Schwan's. This is not necessarily a meal kit in that the meals are already prepared, but you get them frozen or refrigerated, and all you have to do is the heating up part, which is really cool. Meal kits, though, may have an added accessibility issue that I'm hoping that any of you who have experience with this, please do raise your hand so that we can talk with you when we open this up. The idea is that you get recipe cards along with the ingredients that you've been sent. And while I hope that these can be made available electronically, I'm not so sure that they are. So while this service is a super cool idea in that you could have someone basically do the sous chef stuff, right? All the prep work, and then all you have to do is put it together. What I don't know and hope to hear from you guys is, does this work in terms of how easy is it to access the information that you want? So with all of that information, I'm now ready to open it up to some input from the community. So I'm going to look and see what we have here. Again, *6 if you'd like to speak, And I see the first person who has a hand raise. I'm going to call on you by area code if that's okay. So we're looking at 585. Go ahead, 585, with your question.
Hi, Ricky. It's Kirsten from Rochester, New York. I had two little quick thoughts. This is really lovely. One is about Uber Eats. I know you said you were only going to talk about 3 different services, but that's one that I'm curious about, and I would love to hear other people's experiences. And then the other is, I've heard that Seeing AI is working with different corporations and companies to tie in the product code channel. I'm wondering if you know, or if Hadley has any influence on the possibility of places like Blue Apron or HelloFresh being connected with Seeing AI so that a product code could be scanned like with that channel and then those recipes they read.
Both great questions. So I will share my own experience with Uber Eats, and then if anybody has anything to add, you certainly can. It has only recently come to my area, and it is relatively usable. I think I put all of these services in that same category of relatively usable. It, too, is one of these that has fees that are pretty well not hidden. So you kind of know what you're getting. Unlike Postmates, you're not going to be shocked by the bill at the end of things. The only downside I've found to Uber Eats is, aside from any accessibility challenges that you might see, the only downside I have found is that the selection in my area isn't super great. In answer to your question about Seeing AI, we don't currently necessarily have influence as far as what gets added, but I think, I love the idea of having that sort of partnership with a company. You can use Seeing AI and use its short text or document feature to theoretically read a recipe card that came with Blue Apron or the like. But the idea of having more and more barcodes or more information added directly from companies, as is done in the case of the IDMate Galaxy and the IDMate family from Envision, users can request, hey, we don't have enough Bath and Body Works stuff in the database. Can you add things? Mm-hmm. And they go out and look at those partnerships. Any other comments on Uber Eats?
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to go next then to...
Yes. It took me a moment to unmute.
Okay, go ahead.
It took me a moment to unmute.
Gotcha.
But Uber Eats, I've used it 3 times, 2 times with very good success, and once the restaurant had my food ready and they couldn't find a driver to deliver it. And I called, or they gave me a number. The restaurant, I should say, gave me a number of Uber Eats to have the order canceled from, phone number. So I just called up and talked to them. Wow. And it really worked good for me. And like you said, the prices, there weren't any hidden prices at all. And we've got quite a few restaurants here, Daytona Beach, Florida, that use Uber Eats.
And that's the thing to keep in mind, is that a lot of this is location specific. So there may be some services that are not at all popular or don't have a lot of partners in a specific area, and in other areas they may very well. All right, next, moving on to 602. 602, you have a question? Go right ahead.
I had a comment about Uber Eats as well as a question.
All right, go ahead.
So Uber Eats I've used a couple of times. I recently moved from Arizona to Colorado. So with regard to the number of partnerships in Arizona, it was just awesome. You name it and you have it there. But here in Colorado, at least with the Indian restaurants, they do not have a lot of choices. The service is pretty good. Accessibility-wise, I found it better than the others. I use a screen reader, voiceover mostly. So that's about Uber Eats. My question was, I visited DC recently for about a week, and I used restaurant delivery services like throughout my trip. And my issue was that the hotel that I was staying in was not very accessible. So I wanted the driver to possibly come up to the room and deliver the food rather than me going down and getting it. And I wasn't sure if this is something they do usually or it's something they're going out of their way to do it for me.
I have had mixed results with that, and more often than not, they're very happy and they actually expect to come in and do that. The only place where I did not have, where it seemed sort of odd for them to come up to the hotel room was San Diego. For some reason, they wanted the person to come to the lobby and pick up the food, but that is after many years of having traveled and ordered food in hotel rooms. San Diego was the only instance where they did seem kind of put upon to do that. But in other instances, they actually have the address line too for the apartment number or suite number or whatever. And if you just put that in there, they seem to not have a problem at all with just coming right up to the hotel room with your food.
So it's not necessary to mention my disability. It's just something they would do for anybody.
That's it. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. Next, we are moving on to, looks like Blind Educator, you are next.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the Uber Eats and the other ones. Uber Eats I've been using since they got here like 2 years ago, and I found them to be very accessible. And when you set up an address, and if you want to be using the same address constantly, there is an instructions where you can tell them they can walk it up to the door, or like in hotels, if you're going to be staying in there, you can give it that, or when you send out or put out your order, and then you get the instructions that the driver is arriving, then you can text the driver and ask them if they could bring it out to you. And I've never had an issue with the driver saying no. As far as DoorDash and Postmates, I have the same accessibility that you have, Ricky, but once I get to the network not available, if you flick to the left, then you would be able to get through all the restaurants, but then you would go backwards rather than forward.
Right. So what you're doing then is scrolling all the way down to the bottom and flicking left?
No, because like for you, when you start going one or two restaurants and it takes you saying that there's no network, the focus takes you all the way to the bottom. So once you do that, then you just start flicking left, and then you're scrolling up. For some reason, it takes you all the way down. And by flicking left, it brings you, you just going backwards.
And you don't then have that issue of the continual retry, network unavailable, that kind of thing. That is excellent. All right. Awesome tip.
Just a tip. And then also for the one who was asking about the AI and like Hello Fresh and stuff, I don't think it was Seeing AI who was partnering up with different companies. I think it's Be My Eyes that who's partnering, who wants to partner with different companies. And that's what I was going to suggest, maybe at IRA, if you guys are members of IRA, or if you're using Be My Eyes, because once you get the recipe, you're still going to try to figure out what everything is in the box for you to prepare your meal. And if there's different spices, you still need to identify each spice. So you're going to have a pair of working eyeballs to identify the spices as the recipe
Right.
calls for.
Yeah, there's a lot of reading to be done there, and Be My Eyes seems to be a nice option for that, given that it's free. You don't necessarily need a particular skill set, for the person who's reading these things to you. And so Be My Eyes, for those of you who don't know, is a service that is volunteer based. So people sign up for the ability to basically be a pair of working eyeballs, and you can use this app for free to call Be My Eyes, be connected with a person who will then assist you with whatever visual task you have, whether it's reading a thermostat or, in this case, identifying spices or reading recipe cards. Awesome. So let's go ahead and move on then to 512. You had your hand up. We might have a couple of 512s, but let's see. 512, who is that?
Yes, hi. It's Terry from Austin, Texas. And I use Uber Eats most, pretty much either Uber Eats or DoorDash. To me, it's accessibly, it's so much better than GrabHub or the Postmates. The reaction time is much better. The Uber Eats or DoorDash, you don't have to go through the rating system to pick the restaurant, and you just tap the restaurant's name, and then you will see the rating or the distance from your house or your hotel or wherever you're ordering from, which I like. And the fees are very reasonable, like you said. And the selection, Austin was a little town like 10, 15 years ago, but it's growing like super.
It's huge now. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So the Uber Eats selection it's gone quite handsomely. It's like, I would say over 50 from my location, which is not exactly a center of the city, but I'm still happy. And you can customize, the driver can come up to your door, or if you don't want to disturb somebody sleeping, or you don't want dogs to be alerted, and you can go out and get the food yourself. You can just customize that way, so that I like that feature also. And drivers, and the waiting time is significantly shorter for Uber Eats or DoorDash compared to GrabHub, because GrabHub, I think GrabHub comes from the restaurant's delivery person or a restaurant who's hired for delivery purposes. So usually you have to wait like 45, 50 minutes, an hour, or something like that. So compared to Uber Eats, usually half an hour, sometimes less than half an hour, which I really like. So that's my take for Uber Eats and the DoorDash.
Absolutely, and I agree. You actually raised two great points. And one is, a lot of these places will tell you what the distance is from your location. And that's nice to know, because if you're ordering crepes or something, which I don't know if I would order crepes for delivery, because it just seems like that's a delicate thing and something bad might happen along the way. They would be all gooey. But if you were daring enough to do this thing, you probably want to know that the restaurant is maybe 1 or 2 miles from you rather than 15. And even something that isn't as delicate as crepes, you still kind of have the issue of how cold is the food going to be by the time it gets to me. So I want to know how close the restaurant is. There are ways, and they differ between services, but there are ways to actually determine the address of the restaurant. And that too can be important if you know that, well, the restaurant on this street is really, really good, and the same restaurant that's on this other street is not as good. So I want to choose this particular one. It's nice to know that from these services.
Can I jump in with a little tip?
Yep.
I'm not sure everywhere else, but I know Uber pushed out another app update a while back, and they say that depending on the delivery fee, that's how far your restaurant is. So if it's a $1.99 delivery fee, then you know that the restaurant's going to be fairly close. If it's close to $6.99, it's going to be further away from you. So that may be another tip.
Right. And some services will do that, and some services will complicate that. And they'll say, it may mean that, delivery is super close to you or whatever, except we've partnered with these restaurants and it's $1.99 for these guys, and they still may be 8 miles away. So you kind of still have to pay attention, but the delivery fee may give you a clue in any case, and you might want to investigate further just to see, is this in fact close to me or not? All right, let's go on then to 865. You are next.
Okay. Yes, I would like to know, with all these deliveries that we're talking about, do they have any specific phone numbers?
Do you mean like for certain locate? Oh, do they have any phone numbers that you could actually call and speak to a human? Is that what you mean?
Like instead of doing it online, yes.
I'm hoping that someone has an answer on any of these. The ones that I've used, if they do have those things, they're pretty close-mouthed about it. They tend to want you to only do this online and not call and speak to a human. We had one that was a local delivery service here, and they were called Foodie Call. It's kind of an interesting name, but they were purchased by Bite Squad. Before they were purchased, because they were a local service rather than kind of a national or international chain, they did have the ability for you to just call them up and say what you wanted. But I don't know if that tends to be the case for these national ones. Go ahead.
Yeah, Uber Eats, they do have the restaurant's number. You can call in when you order. Then if something goes wrong, you can both talk to the restaurants or Uber Eats or Uber customer service people. Then they are really good at something goes wrong, like you can get the refund really quickly. And you have to mention what went wrong, but you have among the choice you can pick, like food was damaged or food was missing, or the delivery guy didn't bring the correct order or something like that. So you can kind of coordinate either way, either customer service for Uber, or you can directly talk to the restaurant.
Right. And so in those cases, it's assuming that you have actually placed your order online, but you can still talk to someone just to kind of verify or to say that something went wrong. So it is possible to talk to a human, but maybe not so much for the initial placing of the order. That's a great thing to look into. So if anybody happens to know an answer to whether any of these do have the ability to just kind of phone your order in, please let me know either by raising your hand here, or if you're listening to this on the archive, you can send me a message, enger@hadley.edu. That's how I can be contacted. If any of you need resources that have been discussed this evening, you can also send me an email for those as well. All right, moving on to 301, who has a question.
First of all, you were talking about the deliveries of food. We had a horrible experience at National Convention. A couple of us had ordered pizza, and the lady's husband went down to meet the gentleman because he said that that we had to meet him at the front door, and they never. It took forever, and they never. The husband never found the pizza guy.
Oh,
It was the
gosh.
craziest situation I've ever seen.
That is kind of a nightmare. And that's, you always hope that they'll be totally fine with just bringing it on up, because in convention, especially if you are having to go down and meet someone at the front door or the front desk or whatever, a lot of times you may be in a very large hotel, and things that you could normally say, if you could just look for the blind woman, because I won't be able to see you, at a blindness convention especially, you're not going to have that ability, because there are lots of people just like you, some of whom may have also gotten deliveries, and they're looking for their people. So that can be a crazy time for sure. 206, it looks like you have a question. You are next. And that's star 6.
Ma'am, I still didn't finish what I was saying.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize. Go right ahead.
Okay, we just started using Uber, and this was funny because I didn't even know that Uber Eats existed, and then I got this email, something about, I must have gotten some freebie or something about Uber Eats, and I didn't even know what it, until tonight, I had no idea even what it is. There was no explanation or anything about what in the world they were talking about. So I didn't even know what, so first of all, are these Uber drivers that are delivering the food from all these restaurants?
They are, actually. So the way that Uber Eats works is usually you have somebody who's signed up as an Uber driver, and they can also sign up to deliver food through Uber Eats. They may choose just to drive for Uber Eats and not really do the rest of the Uber anymore. But a lot of times these places will have promotions. Like, for example, the one you might have gotten, and it's hard to say for certain, but the one you might have gotten is whenever you are an Uber rider and then Uber Eats comes to your area, they may send you something and it says $5 off your first order. And so they do kind of share promotions like that. All right, let's go ahead and go to 206.
There we go. All right. Hi there. One thing I've been learning about a lot here in Seattle, I think it's in California, New York, it keeps growing. It's something called Munchery. Has anyone used Munchery?
That's a new one on me.
So
what is it like?
It's very cool. It's you've got chefs from around the city, and they're designated to make certain meals for this company. And every day you get a menu with certain selections. And the cool thing is they deliver it's a dinner, so you can get a salmon dinner or steak dinner.
Yeah.
The only thing is it's cold, so all you have to do is put it in the oven. It's already cooked and everything. You just put it in the oven. It has a little bit of a surcharge, but not too bad. I think you can get a meal for a good under $20. I've used it a couple of times. So for those who don't know about it, it's worth looking into, and it continues to expand into different cities and such. So it's called Munchery.
Munchery with an M?
Yep.
Awesome. Quick question about that. Do you get specific instructions about, put this in the oven 400 for 20 minutes, or do you generally just kind of guess, well, I can heat it up in whatever minute?
It's super cool because you can look at not only the instructions, but you can look at the ingredients that are in it. You can look at all the food contents, the calories and all that stuff. And it does give you instructions on oven or microwave or whatever, and it's all fresh. So that's the cool thing about that. Yeah.
Cool. So Munchery, for those of you who are lucky enough to be in Seattle and surrounding areas, and you guys have.
Oh, I think New York and California and other places like that as well. So.
Yeah, they're just not in my area, which makes me cry a little bit. But I can hope. And Seattle and the like has all the cool stuff because there's Amazon Fresh, which kind of goes back a little to part one for grocery delivery and the like. But obviously, Seattle was one of the first to get that because Amazon headquarters and more places are getting that as well.
And because we're cool that way.
Yes, apparently. So let's then go to, we have 407 who has a question. And just a quick reminder that if you are unmuted at the moment and maybe have a little bit of background noise, go ahead and mute if you're not currently speaking. So 407, go ahead.
Hi, this is Judy. I just had a question and a couple of comments. The comments were about the person who mentioned about the drivers coming up to the room. I think some of that also depends on the hotel's policy because we were at one hotel in particular, and when we called down, I can't remember if we called down to ask or for something else, and they said, oh, we're not allowed to let the drivers go up to the room, so you have to come down. So sometimes I think it has to do with that.
Ah,
but
okay.
Some time I had an issue, I just put the room number and they come up. And then the other comment has to do with, I don't know if this is an Uber Eats thing only, because I've only seen it with Uber Eats. But there are, just like with Uber, I know they don't call it this, but like surging or busier times where the fees are higher.
Oh, yeah. So that happens with Uber Eats as well, or have you seen that?
But I don't remember exactly where in the app it shows you that, but I have seen, maybe it's where it says same place where you would see delivery is $3.99. I think it'll say something like, this is a busier time now. What is it? Oh, high demand, or it's busy here, so the fees are slightly higher, or something like that. I think it tells you.
Yeah, that would actually make sense because we've certainly seen that on Uber itself. So, Uber Eats would not be immune to that kind of thing. Thankfully, I've never seen it before, but that is definitely another thing to keep in mind as you're kind of looking for hidden fees and how much is this really going to cost is surge pricing happening. And I would assume that there is the possibility for surge pricing on all of these services. Now, I have seen on Postmates before where it would say area is too busy. And so they just simply wouldn't go to that area. It might be somewhere downtown where there's no parking and it's Saturday night. And so they just say area is too busy. And the other one I have seen is no Postmates nearby. So you might want something that is at a particular place, and that place might be close to you, but all the Postmates drivers are across the city or whatever. And so it simply does not allow you to order from that restaurant until somebody either turns on their app in that zone or, somebody drives close enough to that restaurant that it makes it worth their while to grab your food in a reasonable time.
Yeah, and I agree 100% on Postmates and the fees. It's crazy. And we actually got a promotion where it was like, oh, we get $100 in free delivery if you refer someone else. And I don't know, that never materialized. So that could be us, but I'm not sure about that. But my other comment was about, and I can't remember. So my question was, have you or anyone had success with, like you were saying in the beginning, if you're trying to order something that is not on the menu, with any of these services, calling the restaurant and like once you place the order, adding it that way from the restaurant? Oh, and I do remember what I was going to say is that sometimes, my other comment was that sometimes when you're ordering, you have to be careful if the restaurant closes while you're ordering and you get all excited about what you're going to And then at the end, sorry, the restaurant has closed. And it might be that they haven't exactly closed, but they're, it's close enough that they're not accepting any more deliveries. It did happen once where they weren't accepting any more deliveries, but it was way before closing time. So I called the restaurant and they said, oh, I don't know what's going on. We'll fix it. And they actually did do something on their end and it got fixed. So it's kind of weird.
Oh, good. So in answer to your question about if I'm not sure about calling the restaurant if I want something that isn't on the menu and adding it that way. That I've never tried. I have had the instance where I've ordered something that isn't on the menu and the person picking it up gets there and they say, we don't have that. Can we substitute something else for you? And so sometimes they'll actually just hand the phone to a person at the restaurant and you can talk to them directly. But that has always been once the driver is there, not necessarily before the order is made. So that can get kind of weird.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Have time for a couple more questions. So we're going to go next to 602. 602, you got a question?
Yeah.
All right. Go right ahead.
Bhumika here again from Colorado. I wanted to, I really appreciate this discussion and the information about different apps, ones that are accessible more than others. But I also wanted to ask if there's something we can do to, let these people know that, the creators of these apps, that things are not accessible and work towards making them accessible. I haven't tried it with the food delivery services, but I've tried it with another app and I've tried to give them feedback on it. It's a different story. I never heard back from them, but is there something we could do to improve the accessibility?
I wish that there were an easy answer to that because it's something that we all want to do, right? We all want to tell people, and not even really in a complaining way. We don't necessarily want to call them up and yell at them and say, you did this wrong. We just want things to work. And I think the challenge is that, number one, it's hard to find the right person to give feedback to. And, the second part is, what kind of feedback do you give? Because a lot of people don't know what accessibility is, and they hear that word and they become a little frightened because it's kind of the unknown and they don't know where exactly they should turn for answers on that. My approach to this is I tend to write in a feedback form, or I will do a little digging and try to find someone that's a little higher up to send an email to. And then in my message, I will describe what accessibility is. I will send them a link where they can learn a little bit about accessibility. I mean, they could learn a lot if they want to, but the link I send is WebAIM, WEBAIM.org. And that has a lot of information for developers and the like to really get a picture of what accessibility is and, more importantly, how do they implement it. I think each person's approach to this will be different, but the key really is to try and find someone who might have the power to do something about this. And that's kind of the biggest challenge. But if you have the right person who is an advocate, then things can move forward. One other thing that I've done before with some success is to mention the company on social media and say, hey, at Grubhub or whatever on Twitter, we're seeing some accessibility issues in your app. Can you contact me so that I can provide further feedback? And what that does is allow other people to retweet your message or send it out as well to show kind of solidarity. It looks like we are really getting close to time. Unfortunately, this is always so much fun. but we just don't have as much time as it would take to explore all of these things. We're going to take one last question from Brad. What do you got?
Hey, you there?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, sorry, I raised my hand a while ago. We moved on and talked about something. I have used a number of these services before. I've had good luck. I've had bad luck. One I wanted to point out that is a smaller service, a company called Favor. They are out of Austin. They have been growing. I've been using them now for several years here in the Dallas area. They were limited in their availability in Dallas, but they have grown. I do know from some of the emails that I have received, they have moved on and expanded to other areas. I know they're in Boston, Massachusetts, and my mind's gone blank, a number of other large places. What I would suggest is that you download the app from your App Store or your Google Play Store and see if it's available in your area. One of the things I particularly like about them is, of course, as they've grown, it's a lot like your Postmates or your Grub, DoorDash, or the Uber Eats, where they have a list of restaurants that are available, but you can also pretty much ask them to go anywhere. Tell them the name of a restaurant. You can search for it, just like, you know, what you do with all these kind of things. And you can order anything you want. What I particularly like about it is, while they are running your order, which they call running your favor, it's easy to communicate with your runner. You have the ability in the app to either call them or text them. Frequently, the runner will text you, "Hi, my name is, you know, John, whatever. Running your favor. If there's anything else you need, let me know." They will communicate you sometimes more than you would like throughout the process. But it's very good. One of the things, so many of these, you place an order and you have no idea. It's in a black hole until it maybe shows up, and you're really not updated on the progress of your order or what's going on. And these guys do a very good job of that. As far as accessibility, their app, I have no problem with it. I've been using it now for, three and a half years. I do remember when I first set up, there was some issues entering my credit card information. And I was able to call customer service. It was in the middle of the business day. I called customer service in Austin, and someone was on the phone and helped me step through the process. There were some edit fields and some things that I can't remember, it's been a long time, either weren't labeled or were mislabeled. And they were aware of VoiceOver, and they were very interested in what my issues were. And not only stepped me through the process, but were very interested in learning what my issues were, and so that they can take the necessary steps to address this and hopefully correct it. Since that time, I haven't had to do anything. I've had a couple of different phones and operating systems, and every time I move and the app goes with me and I stay logged in, it works fine. It's my favorite one.
Excellent.
On there.
Yes, I was going to say that.
You can save your previous order. So if there's something that you've taken the time to enter, like I used to use it when I was at work, and I'd order frequently, and if I could order the same thing, maybe from a sub sandwich shop or something. I even get my Nasty Jack tacos and have them.
Oh yeah, Jack in the Box tacos, nothing like them.
I can open up the list of past orders, select something, tap, done. Once you've got it set up, it's really good. Their fees aren't bad. They charge a flat fee for every delivery, and used to be a 5%. It seems to be more like a 10% processing fee now, but it's not bad.
It sounds good. And again, that's Favor,
Favor, F-A-V-O-R. Look for it in the App Store. I'm sure it's on Google as well. And find out if it's available in your area. They've been growing.
Absolutely. Give that a shot. We've mentioned a number of delivery services in tonight's discussion. And believe it or not, there are a lot that exists that we actually didn't touch on, like Beyond Menu and Bring Me That, and the list goes on and on. Eat 24, Seamless. So if you would like any of these, the names of them or what have you, please feel free to email me, enger@hadley.edu. We have reached the end of our second event. So sorry to say goodbye, but I will see you next month where we are going to speak about voice assistants. So if you always wanted to know about Alexa and Google Home, Siri, those types of things, start looking forward to next month now, because we will be talking about those. Meanwhile, you can catch Hadley, of course, on Twitter and Facebook. We're Hadley Institute. And I hope you have enjoyed the discussion. I certainly have. As always, I learned a lot. And again, thank you so much for joining.